the central disorienting reality of travel in later life is that the world hasn't actually become more confusing. It's that the navigational scaffolding your brain relied on for decades, the local landmarks, the familiar traffic patterns, that intuitive sense of place from your hometown, it just instantly evaporates the moment you step off a plane in a foreign city. Now, if this sounds familiar, I want you to know it has very little to do with a declining sense of direction, and everything to do with a predictable and totally manageable psychological phenomenon. So let's dive into exactly why this happens and what you can do about it.
Yeah, this really is the heart of the matter. It's not that you've changed, it's that your entire environment has. All those mental shortcuts, the landmarks, the whole web of familiar cues that your brain uses to navigate on autopilot at home, poof, it's all gone. Your brain is suddenly forced to build a new mental map completely from scratch. And believe me, that is an enormous task. So here's our game plan. We're going to build that world back up piece by piece. First, we'll look at why that familiar scaffolding just vanishes. Then, we'll get into the science of what's happening in your brain when you feel lost. From there, we'll unpack a really powerful system called the orientation protocol, breaking it down into 4 simple steps to get you back in control. And finally, we'll talk about a new mindset, transforming you from just a tourist into a truly confident explorer.
Okay, let's start with that feeling of being completely and utterly lost. It is so crucial to understand that this disorientation, it's not a personal feeling. It's a completely normal human response to a radical change in your environment. Really, it's not you, it's the police. And there are 2 main culprits at play here. You've got spatial anxiety peak. That's that sudden jolt of panic when you realize nothing looks familiar. And then you have cognitive load saturation, which is just a fancy way of saying your brain is totally overwhelmed. It's flooded with new sights and sounds, all while trying to figure out where to go. It's kind of like trying to solve a complicated puzzle in the middle of a loud, crowded market. It's just too much.
So what's actually going on inside our heads during these moments? Because this isn't just a vague feeling. It's a measurable biological and psychological event. Let's break down the science of it.
The core concept here is something called environmental press. Think of it like a weight you're carrying. In your hometown, that weight is super light. Your brain doesn't have to work hard at all. But in a new city, that weight suddenly becomes incredibly heavy. The environment is demanding constant attention, constant decision-making, and your brain's processing power is the muscle trying to lift it. When that weight is just too heavy, you experience stress. It's that simple.
And what happens is our whole strategy for navigating changes. See, at home, you use what's called allocentric mapping. It's like having a bird's eye view, a 360-degree mental map in your head. You just know how streets relate to each other. But in a new city, your brain defaults to egocentric navigation. This is a much simpler system based only on your own point of view. Turn left at the bakery, walk 3 blocks, turn right. It's just point to point, which means it requires constant active thought and gives you no larger context. And that's exactly why it's so mentally draining. And all of this is piled on top of other pressures. First, there's the visual noise, just the sheer amount of stuff bombarding your senses, making it almost impossible to find the one street sign you actually need. Then there's decision fatigue. Think about it. At home, you walk on autopilot. Here, every single step, should I cross here? Is that the right way? Is a tiny decision that drains your mental battery. And then there's a sneaky one, social status anxiety. It's that fear of looking lost or vulnerable that makes us rush. And of course, when we rush, we stop observing and we make mistakes.
And this right here, this is the trap. The moment that first spark of panic hits, your brain's alarm system, the amygdala, it just takes over. And as a survival mechanism, its first move is to basically hijack resources from your brain's CEO, the logical problem-solving part. So at the exact moment you need your logical thinking the most, your brain is biologically making it harder for you to access it. It's a truly vicious cycle.
Our modern solution, the smartphone, can actually make this whole thing worse. We fall right into the digital dependency trap. When we're just staring at that little blue dot on the screen, we're not looking up at the world around us. We don't notice the cool church steeple or the unique mural on a wall or even the direction of the sun. We get so focused on that dot that our actual awareness of our surroundings shrinks to nothing, and it becomes impossible to build a real intuitive sense of place.
Okay, so that was the problem. It's deep, it's biological, and it is absolutely real. But the good news is there is a solution, and it's not about magically getting a better sense of direction. It's about having a better strategy, a deliberate, powerful strategy to take back control. This right here is the single most important idea we're going to cover.
Before you can figure out where you're going, you first have to know with absolute certainty where you are. Direction? That comes later. Orientation? Knowing your place in the world relative to some fixed point? That's everything. It is the foundation that all confident navigation is built on.
And here's how we do it with the orientation protocol. It's built on 3 main pillars. First, we establish an island of certainty, a mental anchor point, like your hotel. Second, we use reverse mapping to actively build the return journey in your mind as you go. And third, we practice the 2-minute scan, which is just a deliberate pause to let your brain catch up and get its bearings. So, principles are great, but how do we turn them into things we can actually do in the real world? Well, this whole protocol builds into a simple 4-step strategy you can start using on your very next trip. Here they are. We're going to become the architect of our own movement. The strategy involves 4 simple habits: creating an analog backup, practicing that look back, defining a perimeter for yourself, and then taking a moment for what we call a seated orientation. Let's break down each one. Step 1 is so simple, but it is profoundly effective. Always, and I mean always, carry a physical business card from your hotel with the address on it and a small paper map of the area. Now, its main job isn't even for navigation. It's a psychological safety net. Just knowing you have it lowers that low-grade hum of anxiety about your phone dying or losing signal, and this frees up precious mental energy for the actual task of enjoying where you are. Step 2 is a game changer, and it directly tackles that egocentric navigation problem. Every single time you make a turn, you're going to stop, turn a full 180 degrees, and look back the way you just came. Take a mental picture. Ask yourself, what does this corner look like from the other direction? By doing this, you are actively and intentionally preloading the return journey into your brain. You won't be seeing it for the very first time on your way back. This is one of the most powerful habits you can possibly build. And steps 3 and 4 are all about proactively building your confidence. On your very first day, do what's called a perimeter walk. Just walk a 3-block radius around your hotel, your island of certainty. This creates a small, manageable safe zone where you feel totally competent. Then start practicing seated orientation. This means before you pull out your phone to find a destination, you stop. You sit down at a cafe, you take a breath, look around, find the sun, spot a major landmark, get your bearings first, from a place of calm. Never ever try to navigate while standing stressed out in the middle of a busy sidewalk. You know, when you start adopting these simple behaviors, something fundamental begins to shift. You actually move from being a passive victim of a confusing environment to being an active, empowered participant. You become the architect of your own experience. And this brings us to a whole new philosophy. Your pace is your power. Stopping to look back, sitting down to get your bearings, these are not signs of weakness or confusion. They are acts of intentionality. They are strategic moves made by a wise, experienced traveler who understands exactly how their brain works. Slowing down is a sign of absolute control. So here's the bottom line. This is about so much more than just not getting lost. It's about changing the very nature of how you travel. By taking these small, deliberate steps, you stop just following a blue dot on a screen, and you start truly inhabiting the places you visit. You become a sovereign explorer, moving through the world with a quiet confidence that is defined by joy, not by anxiety. Look, this isn't just theory. This is a practical skill set. So the real question becomes, how can you start putting this into practice right now, today, even before your next big trip? How can you start training your brain to see the world just a little bit differently? All right, here is your first mission, should you choose to accept it. It's simple. The next time you leave a grocery store, a library, a shopping mall, any busy building, don't just rush out. Stop. For just 2 minutes, or hey, even 30 seconds, stand still and do a scan. Notice the building across the street. Notice the direction of the traffic. Notice where the sun is in the sky. Just observe. This tiny act is the very first step in engineering your own navigational sovereignty. It's the beginning of seeing the world not as a confusing maze, but as a place where you truly belong.